Hi, welcome to my first Patreon rewards video of 2020. I've had the last 2 weeks of December, I actually had off, and I thought that because I had it off, I was going to get a ton of stuff done. I did get a lot of stuff off my to-do list, but a lot of that was stuff that wasn't necessarily production stuff, not necessarily drawing stuff. I did get some drawing done. I worked on my comic and some illustration stuff, but most of the stuff that I was doing was things like I spent a couple of days putting together a sketchbook. I think I'm gonna start selling it on Gumroad. Angel Cowgirl 2 with all my latest artwork. That's what I ended up spending quite a few days working on it, putting it all together. It's still not done because I was like, I'm not producing. It doesn't feel like I'm producing anything. So that was part of the thing. I started putting a lot of work on ArtStation. That's something that I hadn't done before. And of course, the holidays, because of Christmas and New Year's and things like that, that took up a lot of time. And I had car trouble again, and so just a lot of like little things just kind of added up, and I did manage to do some stuff, but not as much as I thought I would. Here are the rewards for this month. This is how far I've gotten the work in progress for the very first page of the comic that I'm working on. It's going to be 5 pages, 5 pages, 5 panels. I don't know, but it's going to be much shorter than the first one. As you can see here, I already have the CG backgrounds, and actually, speaking of CG backgrounds, I'm going to talk about that soon. So here's the rough for page 2, and notice how this is just like the one panel in page 2. So that's kind of the way it's going to be throughout. Like there's just going to be like the one panel. And then this little blue box is going to go away once I'm actually done with the thing. But this is my guide to like this is my my bleed box. So I don't draw anything or put any word balloons beyond this little blue box. So here's the thumbnails that I did to build to work up to the comic, so you could see that here's this little thing is right here, and then 3 is going to look like this. This is page 1, which is over here, so you can see how this works, and etc. etc. So here's going to be a rough panel of a different thing. I haven't done that yet, and here's more thumbnails for my comic. So I've been recording the process as usual. The interesting thing will be once I get to the coloring stage or the lighting stage, what's going to happen at that point. It's going to be very different once I work on it. So speaking of the CG background, so the very first time that I did a CG background, what I ended up doing was just taking I just pressed the what is it, the print screen button on my keyboard, and that's what I did. I took a print screen shot of the Blender program shot, and then I just took it. One of the and took that as my background, and if you look very closely at that background in that comic, it's very pixely. One of the reasons I did that was because when I pressed render, it took so long, it just barely rendered. It was really weird, and the render that I got was really weird, and it was partly because I hadn't figured out how to light a scene, and I hadn't realized that I was some of the geometry was being doubled up in the shot, and it was making the render ridiculous. So as you can see, actually, you could actually see here in this shot, there's these columns over here, are extremely weird and pixely. Look at how they turned out. Now, if you remember the video when you see me working on my comic, you see that I actually had to, using my drawing program, I smoothed these out with the blur tool. I kind of smoothed out all the smudge tool, I should say. I smoothed these columns out when things got that way. This was caused because there's a doubling up of the geometry in the mesh, and I didn't realize there's two meshes on top of each other, and they were conflicting. So I managed to light this scene. 2, I managed to get rid of the extra mesh, and 3, that made it so that I could render this at a really high resolution. And then I was able to see, here it is. So I got rid of. So here's my size relationship model, so that you can see what. So I could see how large my characters are within this space. And this is without the character model. But this is also where I got rid of the conflicting extra mesh that was making all the stuff warp. So now I got a very smooth looking column here, and the render took far less time to do. And again, if you really want to take a look at the way it all turned out over here, so you can see here's how all the characters play out within that background. I grabbed it and I shrunk it down, and then now I'm using it here. There's a video where you could see how I figured out how to place all the characters in the shot. But otherwise, it's very helpful, and that of course comes from this thumbnail over here. Here's the shot right here in the thumbnail, where you could see that I had the character here, I had that column, the pedestal here, and this line here is the railing, and then this is the back of the palace, and then you can see that the characters are in the front. So this is the rough version of what eventually became this shot. So that's how I planned these things out. And so I knew that I wanted a shot from about this angle, and I moved the camera into this way. And like I said, I'm recording the whole process, so you'll see the whole process. So one of the things that I did this month that I've been planning to do for a while is to do some original art just to sell via social media, via my newsletter, via Etsy, eBay, whatever it is. Just creating some original artwork. Wherever it sells, that's where I'm going to be posting it. So as an experiment, I started doing it on Instagram. And if there's no response there, then I will go to other places like Etsy, go to other places like eBay, Facebook, wherever where I could find some interest in it. And this kind of artwork is just going to be really quick sketches, something that I just enjoy doing, that is fast and fun. Nothing won't be too expensive. This particular drawing was an experiment in style. I was using the Dan DeCarlo style to do a gal, and so I was just curious to see if anybody liked this style, if anybody had any interest in this. Okay, so this here is a model that I used Design Doll to pose out a pose, and I will show you why I have this character posed the way she is, and then I will explain what I did and how I did it. This is this month's postcard. Here it is. And it so the interesting thing about this one, this is something, it's very similar to the postcards that I've been posting up with some, you know, very buff, very fit ladies, but the difference between this postcard and the previous ones that I've been doing is that aside from maybe some original line work that you probably can't really see over, from an exterior line work, I did not use black at all in this postcard. So I avoided using black ink and black paint. The experiment that I was going with was I was going to create the black myself, so that the black itself had like color variation within it, so that there was a play of color in the darkness, in the black. And I think it in that respect, I think it turned out exactly the way I wanted it to. So as you can see, there's a lot of like color in the darkness, in this blackness. And I like the way that all turned out. It isn't all just one flat black. Just to let you know, just I'll just say who it was that won, which lucky patron won this month's postcard. And this month's postcard was won by William Bell. William, congrats, you're getting this postcard this month. All right, moving on. All right, so remember that design doll pose that I showed you earlier? This is where I used her. I used that pose for this drawing, and as you can see, I added muscle because the design doll doesn't have muscle. It doesn't even have correct anatomy. And it does kind of have this shoulder blade thing, but that even then, that's not quite right. So I had to go in, and I actually still needed to add muscles here, and I had to create the shoulder blades to work correctly. So it's helpful to have a CG model for the major pose, but for things like natural anatomy details and that sort of thing, it's better to actually know anatomy, look at real backs and real anatomy and how it really folds under the skin, and to get that sort of thing accurate. So this drawing here is Robbie. Remember, I was talking about Robbie a couple of months back. I designed her. This is the first drawing that I'm doing. I actually went to the garage where I park at work, and I took a photo of that garage, and because that's where it's going to take place. It's going to take place in that environment. It's going to in a parking lot, an underground parking lot. And it's Robbie, and she's fighting a Naga. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to transfer this to Bristol. This is a digital This is a digital drawing. I'm going to transfer it to Bristol by basically putting it under a light box and traditionally doing a line drawing. And then I'm going to finish it. I'm going to paint it, or it's going to be in color, and I'm still thinking about whether or not I'm going to do an ink and then painting. I'm not sure if I'm going to do something like this with it. I'm I'm debating, I'm thinking about how I'm going to approach the final drawing, but it will be done on Bristol, which means that it may not be able to hold up because it's not going to be watercolor. So what? It's not going to be watercolor paper, and even watercolor paper warps. See how much this warps, and Bristol's going to warp even more, and it doesn't hold. And the problem with painting on Bristol is if you get it too wet, you get these like dots on it, which is not the case if you're using watercolor paper. This hammer is something that I ended up designing in Blender after the fact. I've always had this idea for this hammer design. I wanted the hammer to look exactly like this. The problem with the hammer is that it's got this circular area here. And that circular area is a pain in the neck to draw in perspective. It can be done, but it's extremely tedious to try to get it right. So in order to make it faster so I don't have to tediously work out the perspective with all the frigging grids trying to make a circle look like a circle, I ended up sculpting a rough version of the hammer in Blender. And by rough version, I mean I can't really use it beyond maybe tracing over it because it's kind of sloppy. It's a really sloppy model. But it's functional enough for me to be able to do, take a screenshot of it and then be able to trace over it for illustrations where I have to draw the hammer. And that way it speeds up the process and I don't have to worry about making everything all perspective and stuff like that. So here's the rough drawing, and so everybody on Patreon is going to get this. And finally we have this drawing here. This is yet another one of the drawings that I am selling. So you could see on my Instagram how much it is, and I'm going to be posting it on, again, I'll be posting it on Etsy and eBay and different places like that if you want to purchase it, or you could just email me and I'll send it. I'll be posting it on my newsletter as well. If you're interested, you can directly respond to me on my newsletter. And one of the things that I haven't done but I'm considering doing is anybody who's on Patreon will get a percentage off, like 5% off the price, because you guys are already my patrons. So but this is just experimentation, just selling artwork along with everything else that I'm doing comics and all this other stuff. So, and that is it. Those are the rewards for this month. And here's the thing. This month, there is secret rewards. Now, anybody on Patreon, go to the rewards. There are some things there that I have shared in my newsletter earlier this week, but they're all low-res things. But all my patrons are going to get high-res versions of everything that I shared on my newsletter earlier this week. So I highly, highly, highly recommend you guys go and check out the rewards this week, because there's bonus stuff that I am not sharing here online on the video, because I don't want anybody who isn't following me on my newsletter and isn't on Patreon to know what it is that I am sharing. And I'm going to keep it at that. And that's it. All right. So thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you next time. All right. Bye.